Hi, I'm Jeff Hajek, the owner and founder of Action. This video is part of my lean training system. It was originally released as a DVD a long time ago, but times have changed and the look of some of these LTS videos is now a bit dated. The content is still spot on though, so rather than just discontinue the line, I am posting the majority of each of the 36 videos here, with the remainder available at Action Videos. That's our video service where you can download a wealth of supporting content and watch subscriber-only videos. I recommend subscribing and hitting the notification button if you want to make sure you don't miss any new content. I would also really appreciate if you would hit the like button if this video is helpful and you want to see more content similar to it. The like button helps us get found on YouTube, but it also lets us figure out where you want us to put our future effort. Now enjoy the free version of this video.
Hello and welcome to Action Continuous Improvement's presentation on Pareto Charts. My name is Jeff Hajek and I am the owner and founder of Action Continuous Improvement. In this training you will learn what the Pareto Principle is and why it's important to lean, and we'll talk about how to create an effective Pareto chart. Fortunately, this training is very simple because you already know intuitively what the Pareto Principle is. Let's take the example of looking for your keys. If you're trying to go to work in the morning and you can't find your keys to get your car started, you don't just start randomly looking around the house. You begin by searching the places where the keys most likely are. If you typically leave them on a counter in the kitchen, that might be the first place you'd look. New parents also commonly put the Pareto Principle through its paces. Every parent knows the joy of waking up at 3 a.m. when your baby's crying. But even in that groggy state, the brain does some natural analysis. It goes through a laundry list of possible reasons that the infant woke up. And that list can be quite extensive. There's a lot of different things that can wake up a child. Some of them, like the ones you see on the screen right now, are fairly common. But others are much less likely to happen. When my children woke me up, I seldom went into their rooms thinking I was going to see insects and aliens. But there were a few things that I was pretty confident that I might find. One of the most common, and unfortunately one of the least pleasant things I came across, was the dirty diaper. And the other common reason was that my child was hungry. Now this is where the Pareto Principle comes into the picture. I didn't walk into the nursery in the middle of the night expecting to find bees buzzing around or having to fight off an alien. I went in ready to change a diaper or to feed my child. And as any parent knows, the goal is to get that child back to sleep as quickly as possible. The faster you can figure out what the problem is and fix it, the sooner that child is sleeping. So understanding that the reasons are not evenly distributed, that there's a difference in the frequency of each of them, is at the core of the Pareto Principle. So now I've mentioned the term Pareto Principle a few times. Let's talk about its origin. The name Pareto comes from Vilfredo Pareto, who was an Italian economist about the turn of the 20th century. The work for which he is most well known deals with the distribution of wealth. He actually mathematically proved that 80% of the wealth was held by 20% of the people. And those numbers provide the foundation for the alternate name for the Pareto Principle, the 80-20 rule.
I hope you are getting something valuable out of this video. If you want to get more out of this program, we recommend watching it on Action Videos. You'll be able to watch the entire video, mostly ad-free, and view subscriber-only programs. You'll also have access to a load of continuous improvement downloads.
And what people have found anecdotally over the years is that the 80-20 rule applies in a lot of different situations, not just in the distribution of wealth. And that's why it's so powerful and lean. It's because we understand that when you have an issue, when there's a problem that's going on, you are likely to find that 80% of all the problems can be traced back to just 20% of the causes. And that's a very powerful realization. Why is it powerful? Because it has a big impact on your life. In the modern world, most people have unlimited problems. There's always something new to resolve. But unfortunately, they have limited resources, most notably time. Most people are very pressed and they're always moving around at a frantic pace. The Pareto Principle lets you figure out how to apply those limited resources in a way that solves the greatest number of problems. One of the nice things about the Pareto Principle is that it's very easy to show its impact visually. And this is done on the Pareto Chart. A Pareto chart is simply a rank-ordered histogram. The largest issues are shown on the left-hand side of the chart, and of course, like all histograms, the higher the bar, the bigger the issue. So it makes sense that this is a typical shape for a Pareto chart. Remember, 80% of the issues come from 20% of the causes. So the bars on the far left are going to be much taller than the ones on the right. And that's what gives the Pareto chart its telltale shape. In addition to the bars that you will see on every Pareto chart, you may also see a cumulative percentage line. This lets you quickly tally up the impact of the top causes. Creating a Pareto chart is a relatively straightforward process. The first step is to really understand what it is you want to accomplish. You then select the units of measure, what it is you're going to be representing. With that information, you can go about collecting your data and turning that data into your Pareto chart. And of course, the chart does no good unless you interpret the results and put it to use. Let's talk about each of these steps in a little bit more detail now. We don't just randomly do Pareto charts. We have a reason for putting them together. And in most cases, they'll be done as part of a problem-solving effort. A Pareto chart helps make sure that the resources that are being applied to getting to the solution are well used. But that implies that there are actually resources available to do something about the problem. If you are just doing research, that's fine. But if you're doing a Pareto chart as part of a problem-solving effort, I recommend having resources lined up before you start. It will help you scope out your problem-solving efforts and understand how detailed to go in your Pareto chart. And a final thing to consider when you're doing your Pareto chart is to know if there's anything that's off limits. Occasionally, you'll have to go a little deeper into your analysis, but it doesn't make sense to apply those kind of resources to a problem if it's not on the table. An example of this situation might be if there's a pending software change. You may not want to spend additional resources working on a problem that already has the solution in the works.
As part of the Lean training system this video comes from, we offer a variety of Lean Lego training packages. These include our Lean Lego Flow Simulation, Mistake Proofing or Poka-yoke Lean Lego exercise, and our Visual Controls and 5S Lean Lego exercise. We've also got an Office Flow Simulation for those not implementing continuous improvement on the shop floor. Click the links in the description below or click on cards that pop up on this video to learn more. We'll also add links at the end.
One of the big benefits of using a Pareto chart is its visual nature. When you show a Pareto chart to somebody, they immediately understand the situation. You won't have to spend a lot of time explaining things. Another big reason to use a Pareto chart is that it establishes the linkage between the problems and the causes. And it's not just any causes that it shows. It shows the most important causes so you can go after those first. I do want to give a word of warning here. I'd be remiss if I did not talk about the difference between correlation and causation. While the intention of a Pareto chart is to showcase the causes, it is very easy to inadvertently put on correlated factors. Think about something like umbrellas and worms. The two of them are both highly correlated, but one does not cause the other. A rainy day causes both. An example of something with a causal relationship would be the temperature and ice cream sales. You very seldom see ice cream trucks driving around neighborhoods in the wintertime, but when summer comes, you'll hear the music coming from miles away. That's a causal relationship. The problem with the Pareto chart is that it does not show the difference. You have to use your logic, intuition, and problem-solving skills to make sure that you don't act on a correlated factor. So now that you've decided what it is you want to accomplish with your Pareto chart, it's time to select a unit of measure. When I talk about units of measure, I'm not talking about feet or seconds or anything of that nature. I'm talking about how you want to measure the thing you're looking at. Consider quality. You can measure it by the number of defects, or by the cost to repair, or by the number of hours it takes to make the changes. You have to be sure that the units of measure that you select match the purpose of the Pareto chart from the first step. And the risk here is that if you choose the wrong unit, you can drive the wrong behavior. Let's continue with that quality example I mentioned earlier. It's quite common to see a situation where the way you choose to measure something can change the order in which the categories appear on the Pareto chart. Common small problems might show up on the far left if you're looking at the number of incidents. But costly big problems, even though they're fewer in number, may be the tallest bars if you're looking at the dollars involved in rework. And the measures that you choose will play a big role in how you select your categories. And because the purpose of the Pareto chart is to put things into different buckets, this step will have a big impact in the success of your problem-solving efforts. Now that you know why you are doing your Pareto chart in the first place, and you understand how you'll be measuring your different categories, it's time to go out and collect the data. But before going out and recording any information, I recommend that you form a data collection plan. This will help reduce the time that you spend on your data collection, and it will also help to reduce rework because you'll make fewer mistakes. As part of the planning process, you'll have to decide whether you're going to use existing data or go and collect new data. There is a tendency for people to try to use existing data because it's much simpler, it's already present. The problem, though, comes when that data does not exactly match the needs or the purpose of your Pareto chart. In those cases, you'll have to weigh the benefit of having the data immediately available against the cost of having a Pareto chart that does not exactly match your needs. Another key decision you'll have to make is to decide on the level of detail you want to collect. More detail means you'll be able to look at the data in a lot of different ways, but there is a cost to collecting it. A general rule of thumb that I use is that the more complicated the problem, the more detailed the data I collect. That way, when you turn over rocks in your data analysis, if you find something else you need to look at, you'll have the data available. Otherwise, you'll have to go back and start your collection all over again. Think back to the example Pareto chart I gave at the beginning of this presentation. It showed animals. During the data collection, you would have had to choose whether to collect just information on the number of animals, or if you also wanted to add detail about the animal's age or weight or anything like that. That information would let you do more detailed analysis without having to go back to the drawing board and collect data all over again. Another thing to consider when you're collecting your data is to make sure the time frames of each category match. Obviously, if the duration is different, you are going to get incorrect results for the different categories. But it's not just duration you have to worry about. Because there may be a shift in the relationship between the categories at different periods of the day, it's important to do collection at the same time. What I mean by this is don't collect data for category A in the morning and category B in the afternoon, because system changes may skew the data and drive you down the wrong path. And on the topic of time, it is important to collect data continuously. The most common error people make in this regard is that they stop collecting data when things get really hectic, or they take a break during lunch periods when people are rotating in and out. In general, these unusual times are also the times when you have the most problems. When they are filtered out of the data collection plan, the results look much better than they likely are. Even though it's a challenge, make sure that you collect data continuously during the time bucket that you're looking at. I also recommend doing sanity checks periodically during your data collection plan. By this, I just mean stop and take a look at the data to ensure that it makes sense. Data can often be surprising, but if it looks completely out of whack, you should probably go back and take a look to make sure there's not some systematic error that's causing the problem. When making your data collection plan, be sure to define the processes and methods that you'll be using to collect the data. This is even more important when multiple people are collecting data that will be compiled. If there is not a consistent process in how the data is gathered, there will be bias in your results. Once you begin collecting your data, you will start to see some categories form. In many cases, you won't even know which categories exist until you begin gathering the data. Just make sure that as you start slicing and dicing, you maintain a logical flow to the buckets you select. Unlike the old adage, in this case you do want to compare apples to oranges. What you don't want to do is throw in some other sort of category, like fruit. If you don't have consistency in the categories you are looking at, you'll get bad results and you won't be able to make a good decision from your Pareto chart. And when your data is complete, do another sanity check. Again, it is common to be surprised by the data, but you should not be stunned. If the data doesn't match your perception of reality, the problem may be that you didn't know what was going on, but in many cases it's a flaw in your data collection system. Look for errors, and if you don't find any, then it's okay to act on the information you've gathered.
This video comes from Volaction's Lean training system, which takes a module-based approach to learning about continuous improvement. Modules include a PowerPoint presentation and student guides for every video, plus there are many exercises and quizzes as well. There's also a whole host of supporting content in the form of terms in our Continuous Improvement Companion and downloadable articles. Our modules are currently available in our store and as downloads at Volaction Videos. Click the links in the description below or click on the cards that pop up on this video to learn more. We'll also add links at the end.
Of course, once you've collected all your data, you need to put it onto the chart. At this point, things get rather simple. Using the units you selected in earlier steps, rank order your categories. You then create your axes on your Pareto chart. The x-axis, or the bottom of the chart, contains the categories, and the y-axis, the vertical one, contains the scale that you'll be measuring your categories by. Just make sure that the highest number can contain your biggest category. Let's take a few minutes now and actually walk through an example of a Pareto chart. If you are like many people, the first thing that will jump out at you about this data set is that there are a lot of different ways to slice and dice it. You can choose to look at it by shape, color, or letter, and that's very similar to real life. As I talked about earlier with quality, there are a lot of different ways to look at a defect. You can categorize by number of defects, by the time it takes to repair, or by the cost. Likewise, in this example, you have to choose how you're going to assess your data. Let's start out by grouping our data by shape. As you can see, it would look significantly different if we were to categorize by letter or by color. That's why it is so important to have a clear understanding of what it is you want to accomplish before you begin collecting data for your Pareto chart. So now we finally have our data collected and sliced and diced. It's time to put it on a chart. Most Pareto charts are done on the computer using a spreadsheet program such as Microsoft Excel. But it is not uncommon to see a hand-drawn Pareto chart used during a Kaizen event. While the steps are similar to what you would do in a spreadsheet, the mechanics of a hand-drawn Pareto chart are obviously a little bit different. You start out by drawing your axes. Then label your categories and number the vertical axis. Again, make sure that it goes high enough to cover your largest category. And finally, mark your categories on the chart. In this case, I've actually shown the shapes, but normally you'll just see a vertical bar. And that's all there is to it. Actually, that's all there is to making the chart. The next step is interpreting it. Once you finish your chart, just do a quick sanity check on it. The data can be surprising at times, but if it is, make sure you take a look at your Pareto charting process. Spending just a little bit of time checking your work now can save you a lot of time later. You'll also want to take a look at the categories that you've chosen. Sometimes, once the Pareto chart is complete, you'll realize that the breakdown of your data doesn't make sense. The most common reason for this is that the solutions for the different portions of your category will be different. Consider paint problems. Scratches and paint bubbling or paint adhesion problems would both have different solutions. It might make sense to turn them into two different categories. You may also find that you need to dive deeper into one of your categories. This process is known as a cascading Pareto chart. There's two general reasons for doing this. The first is that a category is overly broad. Consider the pets example again. You may do a cascading Pareto chart to break down breeds of dog.
Thanks for watching this extended free version of our Lean Training System module video. If you want to watch the whole video, check it out at Volaction Videos. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next LTS video that we post, please be sure to subscribe down below. We also always appreciate likes as it helps us get viewed more and makes us keep adding additional content. Thanks for watching, and best wishes on your continuous improvement journey.